A long time ago, when I started to learn hypnosis, when I wanted to become extremely persuasive, I would go to a lot of seminars, and I would love the seminar experience. If you've ever been to a seminar before, if you've ever made the decision to come to a seminar, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's one thing to read a self-help book and kind of fantasize that you have the skills that they're talking about in the self-help book. But it's another thing completely to actually practice skills with real people, with other people. In fact, most people, when they buy a self-help book, they don't even finish it. In fact, some statistic I read shows that only about 10% of people that buy self-help books or self-help material actually finish the product. So not even 10% of people that read self-help books have the common self-help experience, which is to read a book and then fantasize about some future where you have the skills in the book. But if you come to a seminar, if you actually practice skills, this is a much better imagination than just fantasizing. It's one thing to fantasize about winning the lottery. I mean, it's cool to dream about it, but you know subconsciously it's really a fantasy. It's another thing completely to learn real skills, to practice real skills, where you have a significant chance of earning more money because of these skills. This is two completely different experiences. The self-help dreamers and pretenders and the people that actually put in the effort to learn specific skills. So when you come to a seminar, you're surrounded by people that have made the decision to practice real skills because they've got a vested interest in their future. The more you learn real skills, the more you practice real skills, the more your ambition actually gets bigger and bigger and bigger. An ambition that you can plan for, an ambition that you can anticipate, an ambition that you know is coming in your future compared to some vague dream that you hope just kind of happens. And this is most people. So when you're out, somebody like you, somebody proactive like you, somebody who genuinely wants to improve yourself, when you're out in the world, you're surrounded by people that kind of expect magic outside of themselves to do the work for them. And that's not a positive experience. That's why conversations tend to drift towards, it's not my fault my life sucks, it's the world's fault. If only the world would change, my life would be much better. This is the kind of conversation most people drift down into, which is why most people are not that uplifting to be around. But when you come to a seminar, you surround yourself with proactive people, people that have made a strong decision to improve their skills, to improve their lives. So not only do you learn real skills when you come to a seminar, but you surround yourself with very, very proactive people, and you meet a lot of interesting people. And meeting interesting people is a good way to improve yourself, because most people, they spend their entire lives around the same people that will never really do anything with their lives. And you soak up this subconscious negative energy. As I'm sure you know, if you want to continuously improve yourself, you need to surround yourself with people that are all working to improve themselves, not complaining that life is too difficult, that it's somebody else's responsibility, that it's somebody else's fault. You need to make the decision to surround yourself with people that are actively participating in the improvement of their lives by learning skills, by making the decision to learn communication skills, by making the decision to learn persuasion skills. And just because of these people that you surround yourself with, this is one of the main reasons I loved going to seminars. I met this one guy that I never would have otherwise met, and he spent the last 4 or 5 years traveling around the United States, participating in medical studies. He would find these medical studies. He would go to these medical facilities. They would keep him there, him and the other study participants. He would get between 5 and 15 grand for these medical studies. And then he would go off and take a bus somewhere to the next state and go to another medical study. And he did that for 4 years. And he said he was just traveling around trying to find himself, learning more about Jesus. And this guy knew a lot about Bible verses. The more I talked to him, the more he could take whatever Bible verse he could come out of his brain or pull out of his brain or pull out of his memory and apply it to the current conversation. And this is a guy I never would have met in my regular life. Another guy I met was a fascinating street performer. He wanted to learn hypnosis to improve his street performance game. He started out by doing street hypnosis, straight up hypnosis, where he would tell people to come up and snap his fingers and you'll forget your name, and snap your fingers and you'll fall asleep, snap your fingers and you'll wake up and you'll say potato every time I say vagina or something, and jump up and down whenever I say banana. And that was kind of cool, but it was overt, it was direct hypnosis. When he became very, very interested in hypnosis, he realized that covert hypnosis is much more powerful than overt hypnosis. Because overt hypnosis, when you're hypnotizing somebody on the street, a stranger, in front of their friends, in front of a camera, a lot of it is the person just kind of pretending to be hypnotized. But when you use covert hypnosis, when you use storytelling hypnosis, you're telling hypnosis or you're using hypnosis on a much deeper level. And so he started to use covert hypnosis, storytelling hypnosis, to augment his other street performances. He stopped doing overt hypnosis and he started doing magic tricks or things like juggling or making balloon animals, anything that would distract the viewer's attention to think he was doing this, but he was really talking about hypnosis, particularly when he was doing magic, because everybody kind of intuitively understands that magic is really misdirection. You're talking about this, you're looking at this, but the magic is happening over here, and then poof, oh, I didn't see that. It's magic, but it's really misdirection. People understand this. But when he said he uses covert hypnosis, hypnotic storytelling, along with magic tricks, that's like 3 levels of misdirection, 4 levels of mixed direction. Because on the one hand, everyone's watching the magic trick that they know is misdirection. But on the other hand, he's telling a story to go along with the trick. But the story itself has a whole bunch of hypnotic techniques which are misdirecting the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. And he said, when you're telling stories along with magic tricks, you can get away with telling some fantastic stories. If you were talking to a stranger, for example, and you said, you know what, this reminds me of a story. Once upon a time, there was a wizard who lived in a kingdom, and he lost his magic skills. So he went looking for the magic princess that would restore his magic skills. That would sound kind of weird in a straight-up conversation. But if you're doing a magic trick, you can tell all kinds of fantastical stories with all kinds of magical archetypes that are saying all kinds of magical things to each other, which means you can say these magical things to the person you are talking to. And he said he needed to only perform Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, sometimes Sundays. And while he was doing these tricks, juggling tricks, balloon animal tricks, magic tricks, while telling these stories at the same time, these hypnotic stories at the same time, within these hypnotic stories, he was covertly hypnotizing his viewers, his audience members, the people watching him on the street, to give him a crap ton of tips, to be generous, to give freely, to enjoy giving freely, to enjoy showing off to the other strangers how much money you can give. Because the more money you give, the more you show off to all these other strangers what a badass you are, how superior you are. And he would leverage their need for their ego to want to flex over everybody else's ego to demonstrate how much money they could give. And he said he made $2,000 to $3,000 every weekend. And so he would spend Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday just practicing these stories, practicing his tricks. And then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, sometimes Sunday, he would just find a street corner, do some tricks. And he never really needed to worry about getting a permit because he would just do tricks until the cops chased him away. And he wasn't really breaking any laws. He was just talking and doing tricks. And people were giving him tips without him asking. He didn't have any sign saying, please give me money. It wasn't some kind of legal exchange or anything. But he was at this seminar to learn hypnosis, to practice hypnosis, so he could improve your hypnotic game, so he could improve your hypnotic communication skills, so he could become better. And he said he was working on a new business, and this business sounded absolutely fascinating. He didn't really like the idea of traveling around so much, even though it afforded him a lot of money and a lot of sex. Because at nighttime, after he would perform on the street corner, he would go to the bars and he would do magic tricks in the bars, and he would just talk to people in the bars doing magic tricks. And when he was doing magic tricks in the bars, he would attract a crowd of people. And because he wasn't asking for money, nobody had a problem. But as soon as he started doing these magic tricks, simple card tricks and coin tricks, he would gather a crowd and he would scan the crowd, and the women in the crowd that were the most interested in him, based on their body language, he would tell these hypnotic stories and direct the hypnotic stories to them. He said it was based on the clothing they were wearing, the way their hair was dressed up, and he came up with this very, very powerful, very, very kind of specific yet covert hypnotic techniques to target them directly, and they would become super interested in him. And so he would go to the street corners during the daytime and make a ton of money, and he would go to the bars at night and have a ton of sex. But he said he was getting tired of traveling so much because he couldn't really perform in one town for very long before they would realize what he was doing and chase him out or demand that he get a permit or pay taxes or whatever. So he said he was in the process of learning a whole new hypnotic game where he would set up a business. And his hypnotic game was based on being a tarot card psychic. His plan was to memorize all the tarot cards, all 72 of them or however many there are, and understand what each tarot card means. And for each tarot card, he would memorize 5 to 10 hypnotic stories based on the meaning of that particular tarot card. And then he would have the customer shuffle the cards, draw the cards, and then he would look at the cards and say, this means this, and tell a couple of hypnotic stories. This card means this, and tell a couple of hypnotic stories. This card means this, and tell a couple of hypnotic stories. And within the hypnotic stories, based on the content of the card, he would glaze the crap out of his target's ego to build them up, to tell them that you're going to have a great future. You're going to have an amazing future. You're going to make a lot of money. You're going to have a lot of sex. You're going to meet a fantastic romantic partner. You're going to become famous someday, all filtered through the specific content of each card and all connected to these hypnotic stories. Also embedded in these stories was the idea of sharing this with other people. The more you brag to other people about who you are, the more you'll share this with other people. Or rather, the more you share this with other people, the more you'll be covertly bragging about how awesome you are. And his plan was to build a psychic business and start off slowly and build his business only from word of mouth. And that was what he was doing when I met him at the seminar. And he said that he wanted to become a preacher one day. He wanted to establish a church. He wanted to preach the word of Jesus, because when he did these medical studies, he didn't really like talking about Jesus inside the medical facilities because they were all kind of trapped. Not trapped, but they couldn't leave or else they wouldn't get their money. And he didn't want to create any bad blood by talking about Jesus. But when he was outside in between medical studies, he loved to talk to strangers about Jesus. He wanted to help strangers by talking about Jesus. And so he was saving up his money from these medical studies so he could open up a church and be in a same location and talk about Jesus. But I never would have met these people. I never would have had these ideas had I not made the decision back in the day to start to go to seminars. Because when you make a proactive choice to improve yourself, when you make a proactive choice to surround yourself with other people that are also making a proactive choice to improve yourself, your entire world will open up beyond what you can possibly imagine.